We're going to continue today in Perek Chof Aleph. Last week we learned about the Arei Ha'Levim. Today we're going to do Arei Ha'Kohanim. I'd like to read a few psukim in Perek Chof Aleph. Ulivnei Aharon HaKohen. We're starting in Pasuk Yud Gimel Perek Chof Aleph. Ulivnei Aharon HaKohen. Nosnu es ir miklot haroitzeach es chevroin ves migrosheo ves livno ves migrosheo ves yatir ves migrosheo ves eshtomoya ves migrosheo ves choiloin ves migrosheo ves dvir ves migrosheo ves ein ves migrosheo ves yuto es beishemesh orim teisha me'eis shnei hashvotim ho'ele. Umimate binyomin es givoin ves migrosheo, es geba ves migrosheo, es anosois ves migrosheo, ves almoin ves migrosheo, orim arba, kol orei bnei Aharon HaKohanim, shloish esre orim umigroshehem. The Pasuk is telling us that the 13 cities out of the 48 cities which the Levim, we learned last time that the Levim got 48 Orim V'Bnei Yisrael were mafresh. We spoke exactly how the proration of those Orim were amongst the Shvatim. So even though relatively speaking, the Kohanim out of the entire Levim did not have that many, the population wasn't that big, and they were getting 13 out of 48, which is approximately a little over a quarter, it's 27%. Which is a shmuz b'fnei atzmei, maybe we'll see before the end of Sefer Yehoshua. Yet, steht doch klar that the Kohanim received out of those 48 Orim, which were mufresh from all the Shvatim to the Levim, the Kohanim received 13 of those Orim. I'd like to review a shtickle the status and the halacha as far as Arei Ha'Kohanim in their Yerusha in Eretz Yisrael. We know there's halacha that every person is mechuyev to bring bikurim. The ganze Masechtes bikurim, Yoreh Dom Utech Sadeu v'Rei Te'eno Shebikro, and he goes and he brings bikurim. Where you bring the bikurim to Beis Hamikdash, there's a ganze ceremony of bringing, but there is a mitzvah of havor, and there is a mitzvah of kriyas haparsha. Kriyas haparsha is starting to say Arom Yoev Edovi Vayered Mitzraymo, so on and so forth. And the end is Ve'ato heveisi hine heveisi es reishis pri ho'adomo asher nosato li. So the psukim say clearly and precisely that the person who brings bikurim from Yisodeh, in the parsha he says the words ho'adomo asher nosato li. This is as far as a regular person who brings peres bikurim from his own sodeh. What happens? A person that rents a karka, leases a karka. He's a chaklai and he leases a karka, and I'm not talking about oris, he just simply leases a karka, and he grows peres. So the halacha is that he's mevi bikurim, but he cannot make a kriyas haparsha. Why? Because he can't say ho'adom asher nosato li. Schirus is not considered kemecher. Schirus, although there has some din, schirus is equal to mecher, but l'maise, renting or leasing is not considered an ownership enough to say adom asher nosato li. Steht beferish in the Mishnah, whoever rents a karka is mevi, because he's chayav bikur, but he's in the koire, because he cannot say ho adomo asher nosato li. Now, what is the halacha of this 48 orim which were given mufresh from the Shvatim, almost 4 per Shevet? We saw there were some of them 9, which is 4.5 and 4.5, and one of them gave only 3. But basically they gave equal parts to the Levim. So what is the halacha, the Levim which did not get a nachalo al pi ha-goyrel? All the other Shvatim, there was a goyrel, and it says you get here, you get there. We saw every person gets by the Yam, one gets by the Har, one gets in the east, one gets in the south, and so on and so forth. The Levim were dispersed and diversified their Arei Levim all over Eretz Yisrael and Ever HaYarden. The question is, what is the halacha as far as the havas bikurim of the Levim? Steht in Tosefta, in the beginning of Bikurim, Perek Aleph, I'm quoting, "Hakoine ilon echod betoch sader shel chavero arei ze meiv ve'ein koire mipnei shelei kon karka." If you take a ilon echod, somebody buys one ilon from his friend, so you have a land, I want to buy the ilon. So the halach is when you buy one ilon, is loi kon karka divrei Rab Meir, v'chachamim oimrim loi meiv ve'loi koire. Okay, we'll leave that alone. We're not learning Bikurim now. Rabbi Yehuda oimer kol hagerim kula meviim ve'loi koirim. A ger is mevi, but he's not koire because he can't say la veiseinu. Okay, this is Shitas Rabbi Yehuda. Again, this is not the topic we're speaking about today. Bnei keini choisen Moshe mevin ve'koirin shenemar ve'hoyo kitei lechimonu. The sons Yonos and Berechov, we already spoke about Bnei Yisroi. There were Gerim, Keni is Yisroi, he had 7 names, Chosen Moshe. So it's Mevim Vekoyim. Also, I would like to talk about the Sefer of this Piska in the Tosefta. Rabbi Yossi Oimer, Hoyo Rabbi Meir Oimer. Rabbi Yossi says in the name of Rabbi Meir, Kohanim Mevim Veloi Koirim, Mipnei Shelo Notlu Chelek Ba'oretz. Kohanim bring Bikurim. We just now read in the Psukim that out of those 48 Orim, 13 Orim were Arei Ha'Kohanim. Kum Tzugein Rabbi Yossi and says B'Shem Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says that Kohanim have to bring Bikurim, but they don't make a Kriya because Leinot, again, you're supposed to say it's Hadom Asher Nosatoli. Being that they cannot say Hadom Asher Nosatoli, so the Mevi Ve'ein Koire, so says Rabbi Yossi B'Shem Rabbi Meir in Tosefta. V'ani Oimer, says Rabbi Yossi, I disagree with Rabbi Meir Psak. Kishem shenotu levim, kain notlu kohanim, bein midover merube, bein midover muot. So weist ois from the Tosefta that the Bnei Alevim, all the 48 Orim, if they grow anything in their 48 Orim, was maybe a koire, even though they did not receive the nachal or begoira like all the other shvatim, yet they are maybe vekoire because lemaisa these 48 orim of theirs, and they could say ha'adom asher nasatali. The entire machlokes Rab Meir and Rabbi Yossi in Tosefta, the kohanim from Shevet Levi, are they maybe vekoire because they got lemaisa out of those 48, they got a little more than a quarter. It's they or it's Arei Ha'Kohanim. So the same thing, the Levim are maybe the Koire, according to everyone, so too a Kohanim maybe the Koire. But, or, according to Rabbi Meir, Kohanim is Mevim Veloi Koirim Shnei Shelo Notlu Chelik Ba'aretz. Comes again Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yossi says, Kishem Shenotlu Levim Kach Notlu Kohanim. In other words, the same thing Levim is maybe the Kohanim, even though their Nachalo was not dispersed in the very same method of Goyrol, like all the other Shvatim, so to Kohanim, because Lamaisa, the Kohanim, all the Kohanim are getting 13 out of those 48 Orim we just learned. L'chure, it's not only a Taine, it's Lamaisa the Forsh of the Psukim. The Psukim don't make any distinction. It names the 48 Orim, and out of them he just mentions that Bnei Aaron HaKohanim received these 13 Orim. So, l'chure, there shouldn't be any chiluk between Kohanim Levim. So, what's Rab Meir, Oimer, Hoyer Rab Meir, Shalei Notlu Chelik Ba'aretz? What's Lei Notlu Chelik Ba'aretz? First of all, two things you have to understand. Number one, the Levim also did not get it Alpi Goyrol. They only got it Alpi the Sivui to make a Hafrosha from all the Shvotim to the Levim. That's number one. And number two, in as much that Rab Meir agrees with Rab Yossi, that the Levim do bring Bikurim that maybe the Koyer. Why? Because these Orim that they received, even though it was not received through a Goyrol, the halacha is that they lemaised, the halacha is that they are maybe the Koyer, so to the Kohanim. What's nafkamina? It's 13 out of the 48. There's a Pirush Minchas Bikurim, he has Girsoes, and he says he has a different Girsa in the Tosefta. He says, and I would like to read his Girsa, right on the bottom of the Tosefta is Minchas Bikurim. So the Minchas Bikurim, Oyo Oimer Hoyo Rabbi Meir, Kohanim Velevim Lo Hoyo Koyer. According to this Girsa, is not the machlekes Rav Meir and Rabbi Yossi is not if the Kohanim received the nachalo in Eretz Yisrael or not. It's a machlekes in the ikar fundamental understanding of Kriyas HaParsha Adom Asher Nasat Ali. According to Rav Meir, there is no distinction between Kohanim and Levim. And Chanami, the machlekes he threw out Sai Kohanim and Sai Levim. According to Rav Meir, any karka which was not given al pi goyrol, but was given mitzad, that there is a din afrosh, each shevet has to give those orim. So Sai Kohanim and Levim too, all the entire perek Chof Aleph, which speaks about the 48 orim. Please note, it's not sufficient enough to be deemed to be called Adom Asher Nasat Ali, and Rav Meir holds that they are Meivivein Koyer, even though that they have Chelik in Eretz Yisrael in the 48 years. Yet, since they didn't get it, they cannot say Adom Asher Nasat Ali, and Sai Kohanim and also Levim don't get. Rabbi Yossi dings the Chadar Nocho, and he says anybody received the Nachal in Eretz Yisrael doesn't make a difference of the qualifications as long as there is a Nachlos who was given al yedei a method of Goyrol, so it's given al yedei that each shevet was mafresh. It's already theirs. After it's given to them. Once it's given to them, they can be Mevi v'Koyer. So, our gear, so you have to understand what's the difference between Kohanim and Levim. According to Rav Meir, Rav Meir says a Mevi v'Koyer by Levim is maskim, but Kohanim not. What's the chiluk? So even in this gears, that according to this gears, the machlekes Rav Meir Rav Yossi is machlekes min hakotze lakotze. Is karka which is not given through goyrol, is you maybe the koyer or not? According to Lemaise, it's theirs. Could a kohen, could a levi? Let's even according to this gears. The machlekes is shitas Rav Meir is that ha'adom asher nasat ali you can say. What happened? He can't take this or and the guy has a piece of karka, he can't be mekadosh yishu with this piece of karka. But it's his. Why is it not called ha'adom asher nasat ali? Zagmor Babasa, Suyas Zagmor Babasa, which goes over 2 blots starting in Kufyud Aleph, and with Beis and going through Kufyud Gimel and Mud Aleph, state that Elazar HaKohen, Elazar was one of the 4 sons of Arei Ha'Kohanim. He was a Kohen Gadol in the beginning of the Tkufa when they crossed the Yarden. Actually, he died the same year of Yeshua bin Nun, according to most Midrashim. Steht in the end of Sefer Yehoshua ve'Elazar ben Aroi meis vayikberu oisoi begivas Pinchas benoi. It was a giv'ah, empty hill, a sort of giv'ah. The giv'ah was named after Pinchas. Apparently, that was Pinchas's Yerusha. And Elazar vut men bagrom the tate de Elazar. Pinchas was a Pinchas ben Elazar. So Pinchas in his Giv'ah, they buried Elazar ben Arei Ha'Kohanim. For the more Akasha v'chi minayin lePinchas shelo leElazar. Where did Pinchas get his karka from? From his father. So why is it called Pinchas? Givas Pinchas keilu that Elazar is buried in the karka of his son Pinchas, which did not belong to Elazar. Elo melamed shenosa Pinchas isha b'shevet acher umeisa v'yerusha. The Gemara is talking about over there, the Yerusha said, Isha Nachla is going Mishevet Shevet, not getting involved. Gemara said that Pinchas married a woman from another Shevet, Shevet Naftali, and she died, and Api Alocha, Dvar Teire is a Baal Yoshes Ishtoi, so the Nachla that she received from Shevet Naftali went to Pinchas, but it's not a karka which he got by Yerusha from his father. So in that Nachla which Pinchas received from a Yerusha of Ishto, he buried his father. When it comes again, Tesis of Rekta, what kind of question in Minayin Lepincha Shaleva? The halacha is that these Arei Levim, and they gave to Arei Levim Frektesis Vimtoima Maiko Amar Be'Arei Lepinchas Mashaloi Lelozo Shenot Al Chelek Be'Arei Levim. Each Levi, the Boya Oretz Nischalko, so each one got his own Yerusha. He doesn't have to get it from his father. He got Arei Levim, and there were Mafresh, the 48 Olam Levim. Pinchas got a Chelik in those Arei Levim, so he buried him there. What does the Gemara have to come out to? And the Gemara Shparza isn't them. Bal Yoshes Ishte, Nachlas Oret, Shevet L'Shevet, Fukte Sakasha. What's the Grey Sakasha? They got 48 Orim, And Pinchas received part of his nachala in those orim, and over there he buried his father. He made the Beis HaKvoros, his kever of Elazar, in those orim. The Chuvas Rashba in Chelekei Chuvim and Beis, the Shoyel asked the Rashba, and I would like to quote, Oit Shoalto. This is Loshen that Rashba brings the Shoyel. Hoda Brina Perkesh Nechel Minayin Loyel Pinchas Shaloyel Elazar, Viksha Rabbi Seinu, Bale Atoises, Maiko Omar Haber Pinchas Shaloyel Elazar, Shenot Al Chelek Be'orei Alevim. This is, he quotes the thesis. V'lo yoradeti l'soif daitom. The Shoyel asks, the Rashba, I don't understand what thesis wants. Shelo hoyo l'kohanim chelek v'nachlo be'orei alevim b'sh'ar ha'oretz u'mikra mole diber hakosu shenema be'artzom lo'ysinchal v'chelek lo'yiyeh l'cho b'seichom. It says b'feirish, the kohanim did not give a chelek in Eretz Yisrael. So what does Tesis come along and say that Pinchas received the part of Eretz Yisrael? Zog the Rashba, I'm not getting it, that we have to accomplish. Shuve agav chu felo'iyem bomar, imishum kro be'inyan alevim, ksiv al ken omarti betoich bnei Yisrael le'inchel u'nachlo kish'ar shvotim orish l'shevet notnu, u'mehem oyu livnei Arei Ha'Kohanim, u'mikre mole diber hakosu b'sefer Yehoshua, v'ayitem bnei Yisrael alevim enachlosom al pi Hashem es orim ha'ele, Vayetze hagoyro lemishpat hakehosi vayulu bnei Aaron hakohen melavim mate Yehuda mate Shimon orim 13. Zog the Rashba that the Shoyel is wrong, because even though the Kohanim didn't get a nachalo al pi hagoyro, like it says in the Torah, be'artzom le'simchol v'chelek lo'yil l'cho b'seichom, yet they received nachli in Eretz Yisrael from the 48 shvatim that they were mafresh to the Levim. So the Shoyel asked the Kasha, they don't have a chelik in Eretz Yisrael. So the Rashi first Chak start shining. It's Mikra Mola here are Psukim Diber HaKosu. There's a Ramban. The Ramban in Baba Basra in Daf Pei Aleph in the Sugya for Bikur. It's not in the same place. The Ramban brings the Tosefta according to the old Girsa. The Machlekes Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda. He's only legabe kohanim, legabe levim. They all agree there's maybe v'kayri. Tesis Rabbi Yehuda Chosid also brings down the same gears, not like the gears that we had from the Minchas Bikurim, but the old gears of the Machlekes v'gen kohanim, and not about the levim. They all agree, and only in kohanim they disagree. Koshel Rabbeinu Elchonon, Lomo Oim Shalom Lo Kohanim Chelek Ba'oretz v'Ksiv B'Sefer Yehoshua Sheroyu Orim Libnei Aharon. Just get the kasha. Why? Rabban Zakashe, Rabbi Yehuda Chosid's kashe. Why does it say that the Leinot L'Kohanim Chelek Ba'oretz? Psukim Meferoshim here by us that they received the Shema Yesh Shum Posuk Shemimayet Oiso Midin Nachlo. Maybe there is some kind of a posuk Shemimayet them Midin Nachlo. But Zorich Yin Hod Tnan B'Soif Ma'is Hashem Gabe Asher Nishbat Allah V'Seinu Mikan Omru Rab Meir Oimer Afloi Kohanim B'Levim. Ramban means state in the Mishnah Ma'is Hashem Del Gabe Vidu Ma'isres Mikan Omru. Also over there is a lot of kriya in the vidui. It says Mikan Omru Yisraelim Mamzerim Misvadim Avaloi Geirim Veloi Avodim Mishuchlorim She'elam Chelek Ba'oretz. Rabbi Meir Oimer Aflo Kohanim V'Levim Shlo Yinotlu Chelek Ba'oretz. Rabbi Yossi Oimer Yesh Lohem Horei Migrosh. State the firish in the Mishnah that Kohanim had Orei Migrosh, and the Orei Migrosh is those 13 Orim that were given from the Levim, from part of Orei Levim, were given to the Kohanim. So they could be, according to Shitas Rabbi Yossi, they could say Vidu Maises, unlike Shitas Rabbi Meir. You know, in Sifri state, the Pasuk state, V'chiyove Alevi me'achad she'orecho mikol Yisrael asher hu gar sham, ubo b'chol avas nafshoi el hamokim asher yivchar Hashem, v'sheires b'shem Hashem elekov kechol echov alevi mo'im shom lifnei Hashem. State in Sifri, V'chiyove Alevi, yochol hu beben Levi v'adei HaKosu medaber, Talmud loimo me'echod she'orecho, misheleinot l'she'oreim b'mokom echod, Yotzu Levim shenotlu sheoreim b'mokim echad. Comes again the Ravid, and the Ravid says Mishalei notlu. I'm quoting sheoreim b'mokim echad. Hainu kohanim shalei nosnu lahem orim ומה שאומר יוצאו לווים שנוטלו שעורים במוקם אחד, היינו שאר בני לוי שקיבלו 48 עיר. This is Loshe L'Ravid. State of Shiurei Sefer Yehoshua, according to the Ravid, that the Levim took the 48 years, but the Kohanim didn't get any nachla, and 0 nachla. The Levim received. Why? Because they got 48 orim, and the Kohanim did not receive any nachla. That's how he learns it. Everybody comes on the bottom and asks, all the Meforshas, if we did it, see if everybody, Psukim Meforshim state in Yeshua, Perek Aleph, that out of the 48 Orei Levim, 13 Orim were dedicated for the Kohanim. So what's nafkamina, the 48 Orim between the 35 Orim which were given to the Levim strictly and the 13 Orim which were given to the Kohanim? Steht doch da Vot, just like to focus on it. There's a lot of rayas to this Vot. There is a fundamental chiluk between the Zchiyah of Nachalas HaLevim in the Orei Levim and the Din Nachala of the Kohanim. The Levim received Nachla in Eretz Yisrael of all the other Shvatim. The only difference was that the other Shvatim received it through a Goyrel. There was a Urvetumi, Mekalfi, a Goyrel, HaKodesh, Kohen Gadol. That's how they split, and they got Shevet Pleni Oylekan, Shevet Pleni Oylekan. Shevet Levi received from Sh'ar HaShvatim. And what the Torah says, Be'alzim Le'sinchol V'chelik Le'yilcha B'Seichom, it means that they shouldn't be a chaluk in Eretz Yisrael. The Shevet Levi should get a portion. Every Shevet, besides Shevet Dan, later on got a little piece in the north. But every Shevet got a certain area, topographical, geographical area. Bahar, Bagivon, Li'adayam, Li'adayarden, in the south, in the north. They had the entire Shevet lived in one proximity. There was one corporation limit to them. What it says, Be'alt V'chelik Lo'yeh, it just means to say they shouldn't have a chelik everybody should sit ba'isa mokim like all the other bnei hashevet they sit together, but their nachalo should be diversified and mefuzer amongst all the shvatim. L'maisa, the Ramban, the Rabbeinu B'chaim say the reason why Shevet Levi did not receive chelik in Eretz Yisrael because they wanted sheloim de ha'torah hamuvhokim mikol shifti Yisrael melamde torah v'dayon mikol shifti Yisrael. You wanted, because Baruch Hu wanted Torah to be diversified, and Shevet Levi's Yoru Mishpatecha Yaakov Eteroscha Yisrael, they are the ones who are limit Torah. Therefore, they said, you know what? We're not going to give him a chelik. It should be only in the north Torah. The Levim should spread around Torah. Therefore, the Orei Levim, the tzura that they got the nachla is that each one of the shvatim should be mafresh mechelkom collectively 48 orim. But the zchiyah of the Levim in those cities was an absolute zchiyah al tirusha Eretz Yisrael. Mamish like all the other shvatim. The other shvatim received it through Goyro, and they received it through the afroshe from each one's chelik, certain cities to the Levim. This is the Nachlas HaLevim. Nachlas HaKohanim is totally different. The Nachlas HaKohanim did not get it b'teres Yerusha Sa'aretz. The idea is, like in Sh'ar Matnas Kuno, that Gans Klal Yisrael's mechuyev to remafish trumas u'maisas, and we know that when you make a frosha from the kri, so you give truma g'dayla to the kohen, midoraisa schita achas pater sachim midrabon zechot ma'arbaim echad v'chamish v'echad v'shishim, and then you got to give ma'aserishin to the Levi, 10%, and the Levi's got to give trumas ma'aser, which has a din like truma g'dayla, from his whatever he received from the ma'aserishin. So the Levim are also mechuyev to be mafresh trumas ma'aser, so trumas ma'aser to the Kohanim. So too the Levim, since they're not Kohanim, the Kohanim are also Levim, but the Levim which are not Kohanim, they're mechuyev to be mafresh orei Moshe v'Michye on the orim they received. At kedekach that in the Meforshim, in the Megillas Esther, declares why do they have to give? Theoretically, from the 48 orim, they should have given 5 orim, 4.8 orim. Why did they receive 13 orim? I'm not getting involved in it. But the concept of the Nachlas HaKohanim is not b'toyos Yerusha l'Kohanim. The Bailis is not a Yerusha l'Kabailis, even though they have an absolute zchiyah, but l'maise, the Kabbalas HaNachlo is not a Kabbalas Nachlo like the Levim, but it's a hafrosha that the Levim give from their chelik. Therefore, Halt Rab Meir, the Kohanim, cannot say Adoma Shanish Balav Yisrael Losas Lomna. They can't say Adoma Shanosatali because they didn't receive it through Yerusha swords. They just received it like other matanas. The Torah says Chaylev Avodosom. This is in exchange for their avodah besamikdash. They received the Trumas Meiser. They received those orim for the Kohanim. Rabbi Yossi holds that no, even they received it b'teiras Trumas Meiser. Yet after everything is said and done, the Meiser within the moment belongs to them. They can say Adon Hashanah Satoli. But we find that Rab Meir, who is the Mor of the Shmeitze, according to the Girsas HaRambam, Ve'Arayved, Ve'Rabbi Yehuda Chosid, and not like the Girsas the Minchas Bikurim, there's enough Kamina, according to Shittas Rab between Nachlas HaLevim and Nachlas HaKohanim. Where Nachlas HaLevim, they can be Mevi V'Koyre. Why? Because the Meiser, they received Chelik in Eretz Yisrael. The only enough Kamina was in the fashion of receipt, if it's through Goyrel or through where the people are mafish to them. Yet, according to Rab Meir, the Kohanim are totally different. Even though they both received it, I mean, theoretically, I would say they both received it. The 48 Orim were given from Klal Yisrael to the Levim, and the 13 out of the 48 received from the Levim and given to the Kohanim. No, there is a chilik in the Kudas Rab Meir. According to Rab Meir, is the Levim received b'teiras Chalukas Ha'oretz. It's just a chilik in what kind of fashion they received it in. And according to Masha'ink and Ora Levim, was given Chelef Avadosim, was given as Matnas Kuna Dikadin. They received the Ora b'tor Matnas Kuna. Mainly, it's short, it's not enough, it's not sufficient to be called Ha'adomo Asher Nosatoli. You know, there's a Pirush Mishnah Rishonim, Mishnah Achronim, Mishnah Rishonim, and Mishnayos. One of the famous Gdela Achronim, Akadmoinim Achronim that were before the Mishnayos. He writes that the Emes, after the Shvotim were mafrish, the 48 Orim in Momenes belonged to the Shvotim. And the only reason why the Levim received it, the only bias is only Zchus Ishtamshus. The tzivu in the Torah was to be given a mokim yeshiva to the Levim as Zchus Ishtamshus. He brings, it says the Pasuk, if you take a Pasuk by Unzere Pasuk, it says, Vayitum bnei Yisrael Levim min nachalosom. It says, Al pi Hashem es ha'orim ha'elev es migrashem. What does it mean, min nachalosom? It doesn't mean a total given from their nachlo, but it means they give away from whatever remained their nachlo. That's what he says. It says, you look at the pasuk in the Torah, Tzavas bnei Yisrael v'nosel Levim min nachalas achuzosom orim lo sheves umigrash le'erim. It's nachalas achuzosom. It remained nachalas achuzosom for each and every shevet, but you gave him orim lo sheves umigrash le'orim sivesem titun la'levim. And he asked the kasha. He says the Chure, the Sefte that we brought before, it's Rabbi Yehuda Michoel Agerim kulam mevim v'lekoyim b'nei kein yichoysim moish mevim v'koyim shenema v'hoya kitei lechimono. Why? Because it says they gave b'nei Yisroi v'hoya atoy, they gave him doishno shel Yerichoi. So the Chure, according to Rab Meir, he asks on himself. According to Rab Meir, since the b'nei the tzitzorim of Yisroi got doishno shel Yerichoi only from Nachalos Bnei Yisrael, so according to Rab Meir, there should have been halacha. They can't be koyret because the Yerichoi is not like, which is only in Tziva Teretz Yisrael to give him mokem yeshiva l'chalosim and bleib sorechiyah. He doesn't understand. According to his pshat, he takes on for the Pashat that in Be'emes the Orim is the Orim which belong to the Levi, to the Shvatim, even after the Afrosha to the Levim. It's only a Zchus Ishtamshus and mokem yeshiva. And therefore, he doesn't understand why Yerichoi really is maybe V'koyre, according to the Tosefta. The Melech Shloimeh in the Mishnah says, what's the machlekes of Meir and Rabbi Yehuda? He brings the Yerushalmi. Very Yerushalmi, Makkah state, the Ritzeach that went to the Ir Miklat. So we know that the Sheishor Miklat is koyvet ben midas, ben shalei midas. If somebody walked in, the Ritzeach bishgogo, it's koylet, and the girl Adon cannot kill him. The other 42 Orim is if the miskaven to be goylet there, so it's koylet, otherwise it's not koylet. There's a machlekes in the Yerushalmi if they had, the Ritzeach had to pay rent or didn't pay. It says in the Yerushalmi, and I quote, in Makkas, in second paragraph, U'mayle sochor oyud schar l'levim, div Rabbi Yehuda, mei omer lohoyu mayle schar. Tane Rabbi Yehuda omer lemachlekes nitnu. Rabbi Yoimel lebezdira nitnu. V'tana Rabbi Yossi ke Rabbi Yehuda v'Rab Meir kedaite. The tanina maila so yischal living div Rab Meir Rabbi Yehuda le maila snem schal. Rabbi Yehuda holds a reitzayach b'shegig that lives in your miklot. He has to pay rent to the Levim. Why? Because as they state Rabbi Yehuda, and the Yerushalmi says he holds like Rabbi Yossi. Why? Because it says that the Orim were given for Achuzosam, and he holds Zok the Yerushalmi like Rabbi Yossi that holds the Kohanim and Levim. Let's say according to the Girsa, he had the same Girsa as Michas Bikurim. Are Chayovim bevidu Maisres, because the Orem Migrush is their Baalus, and they could say Adoma Shenosat Alonu. And Meir says Lebeis Diro Nitnu Loyim. It's not really there. It's not their chelik. It's not their nachlo. Therefore, he holds that Kohanim Levim Apotof the Maisros they don't have chelik in Etzisol, and so too he holds the very same shita that they don't pay rent. The Kohetzrim don't pay rent. It's very interesting. You know, there's a pirush of Rabbi Yonasan Eibish called Avas Yeinason. We know it from the Haftarahs. It's all printed. Some of the Haftarahs are printed up. Rabbi Yonasan Eibish with his Goenis. It says like this: Shmuel, you know, he was his father was Elkanah. It says at the beginning of Sefer. We read the Haftarah. We're going to be reading in Rosh Hashanah. It states Ve'olo ho'ish hahu me'iro yomim yomimo v'shom shnei bnei eli chofni v'pichas koyanim. What is the word Yomim Yomima? So Pashtus, you learn Yomim Yomima means once a year. It says like Elkanah used to go like Pashtus Kaddish Liko B'choyer. It says Yomim Yomima, and Chazal say Rashi brings down, it means once a year. And the kasha is, why wasn't Elkanah Oil Regal in all Shloisha Regolim Bashal? It's a shayla that the Rishonim already muchitzach. Why wasn't Elkanah Oil Regal all 3 times? Why in the Yomim Yomima seemingly he was once a year he came to Rosh Hashanah? He says, the Gemara says in Psochim, the Misha Ein Lo Karka is Potu La'alos L'Regel. And since Elkanah, Shmuel was Mitzitzov Shel Koyach, Elkanah was a Levi, so L'Not L'Chelik Bo'ar, so mainly he had a Ptur Mila'alos L'Regel. He didn't go up to the Beis HaMikdash. And so why did he go, if he had a Ptur of Aliyah L'Regel, why did he indeed go to, as he brings, the Gemara, as a Gemara, a famous Gemara in Chulin, Daf Kufla Med Gimel. The Gemara says Abaye, who was a Kohen, it says like this: Mereish in Daf Kufla Med Gimel. Have a chatifne matante. I used to go and chap arayin matnas kuna. I used to go and chap the older matnas kuna. Ki amine chabu ve'mechaven lemitzvah. If I chap, I show that I have a desire for matnas kuna. Kimen de shamona la'ach the dorash ve'notan shaloi me'itel me'atzme. The Gemara brings the pasuk. Michtef le chatifne. I stopped chapping. It's not V'adayin Meimar Amre Havoli Matonis. I didn't chap, but I asked him. Given Shamin the Tanya, it says by Bnei Shmuel Vayatu Achrei Betza. Rab Meir Omer Bnei Shmuel Chelkem Shalu Befiyim. The Chelek Levi and Meiserishan, they went, and it says in the Novi calls him Achrei Betza. Meimar Nami Lo Yamin. I stopped even asking Meimar Lo Yamin. Azay stopped by V'adayin Yavir Le Matonis. I didn't chap, but if they gave him Matnas Kuna, I used to take. It says, Kiva the Shamin Elad Tanya Balechem Aponim. It says, Atznuim Moishchem Esedem Menu from the Chluk Ve'agargeronim, the Baletayve Choilkin. Mishkel Lami Lo Shaknin. I stopped taking all Matnas Kuna. Milvad B'Mayle Yom de Kippur. And Erev Yom Kippur once a year, I was Noitel Matones Lachzuke Nafshoe Bekahane. I don't want to be forgotten that I'm a Kohen. So once a year, I used to take Matonas. As I state in the Gemara for the Morakasha, why do you have to take Matonas? You could be Peiris Yadayim Beduchim Kol Hashana. So the Gemara answer Leidnei. Gemara the Kazach Abaye was Fanumen in his learning. But Bishas Nesias Kapayim he was Fanumen. So mainly he wasn't able to be Noise Kapayim. And if he's told Betalmude, he's part of Nesias Kapayim. Akoponim state toch in the Gemara that Abaye only once a year was taking the Matnas Kuna in order not to be forgotten Teres Kuna. So too Elkanah went once a year to go to the Beis HaMikdash, and he became a Levi, which did the shiur, the shiur, in order people should know he's Muchzak B'Levi. Why does he have to do more as a kasha? Why isn't he? Why Abaye wasn't Noise Kapayim? He could have taken Meiserishan Be'irei. It says the reason why he didn't, it says, V'shom shnei bnei eli chofni b'pinchas. Hofne Pinchas were mechazer and the matanas. As they state in Gemara, and the Gemara says, "Im roiso mehadrin achar amatanas mishoich yodcha." The Gemara says, if you see the Gemara in Yuma in Daftes, the Gemara says, if you see people running after matanas mishoich yodecho, you quit. Don't. What's his name? So don't take. I mean, this tzaddik was Moishech Yodeh. There was no other. He didn't want to show any other way to show he's a Levi. The only way. That's why he came in Pamachas Bashon. That's one hesber. Another hesber, he says that Elkanah was Oile Rosh Hashanah. The raya is that steht in Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Daf Yudal of the Rosh Hashanah Nifkedo Chano. Chano was Nifked on Rosh Hashanah. And Eli told her she's going to have a son in a year from the time she was Elkanah. The question is, why didn't she come in Echad Miregolim that is a tzivui? So he says, Elazar, Elkanah was Choishesh, Tins, Gans Kolsos, Oimed, Oile, will be Tzali Amokim, they won't have a place. But steht doch oim dem Tzfufim Mishtachar im Revuchim. There was a nace in Beis Hamikdash, everybody had a place. But the pasuk said, "V'shomnei Eli Chofni Pinchas," and they were Rishayim. Because of them, there was no roim lenace in the Azorah. Mele, he didn't want to shtuktzach, therefore he was Oile Rosh Hashanah. That's the shtikul Torah from the Avos. I once heard from Chaim Kanievsky and asked the kasha. The Gemara says that there were 48 orim for the Levim, and in the Yerushalmi is a machlekes. If mailim schar or ain't a mailim schar, Meir says lo yu mailim lo schar, and Rabbi Yosef, the Gemara in Yerushalmi says, what's the machlekes? If lebeis diro nitnu, Rabbi Yosef says it's only lebeis diro, and in Meir it's only orim lo sheves. In Meir they don't collect rent. Frag Dr. Chaim, according to Rabbi Yosef, is given only to dira, but it's not theirs. So I understand why the Elkanah wasn't oil l'regel, because he had a ptur b'shein l'karka is potel la'alos l'regel. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, that they had a karka, so why wasn't Elkanah oil l'regel? If you say that Ora Levim, which we just learned, are given to them ultimately, and he has a din of yesh l'karka, and they could be misvada and the meisers, why wasn't the oil l'regel? That was a Chaim Kanievsky's kasha. If I wasn't nicht oil l'regel given, if he had a karka, he said. So he said the Moed Kazach. It says Vayishachal min Ramasayim Tzefim Ephraim. He brings the Ralbag, phenomenal Ralbag, and I'm quoting the Ralbag in the beginning of Sefer Shmuel. In the Sefer Zeh shekvar hoyo Yishachal min Ramasayim Tzefim Ephraim Shmuel Kono ben Yerucham ben Tzef Efrosi v'nizbai b'Sefer Divrayim shoyo Levi v'Orim b'nei Korach v'lzei nizbar shelo Nikro Efrosi elam mipnei heyoyse gar be'ar Ephraim v'lzei yeroi somoch Ramasayim oidia amokim amiyuchu shemvu haramosa. והנה סומך זה הסיפור לשני הסיפורים הקודמים, כי בכל אחד מהסיפורים רואים מה שהויו מהקלקול בסיבס לוי הויו גר בהר אפרים, כי הנער הלוי הויו גר בבייס מיכו שהויו בהר אפרים, והאיש הלוי בעל הפילגש גם הויו גר באפרים. והסכימו עוד ששני הסיפורים רואים שכבר נוסעים בבייס לחם יהודו, מי שבו ליודע על קלקול, כי הלוי שבו בבייס מיכו הויו בבייס לחם יהודו. ופילגש הלוי הויו מבייס לחם יהודו, משם נוסע האיש הלוי בו את הכל על יודע. Somach lazeh asipur shoyo ish levi gar be'ar Ephraim yotzem min teva bo al klal Yisrael. The Rabak says phenomenal word. The two stories at the end of Sefer Shoftim, we're talking about Pesel Micho and Pilegesh Bagiva, they both were there. And the reason why Mashamayim they were Mesayim that Elkanah would live in Har Ephraim to be mechaper on the sipur of Pilegesh Bagiva and Pesel Micho. So he moved away and he went to Har Ephraim, which is not part of the Dr. Chaim Kanievsky, mainly he didn't really live in Ora Levim. Elkanah lived in Har Ephraim, and mainly didn't have a karka. And therefore, since he was mevate his chus in Ora Levim, therefore he's potem al regel. That was a Yeluishkeit of Chaim Kanievsky to say that the reason why he wasn't al regel meikar adin, because he had a ptur of ein lo karka, because he was mevater, and he, as a tutushtal der al back. The problem is that l'chura, the din of yesh lo karka potem namaisa, what happened to Kaine? A Kohen goes and buys a real estate. He's also chayiv. The whole din karka is because why do you have to have karka? The Gemara says because you learn out from the pasuk v'liyachmod ishes artzecho. The Gemara says befeirush that avodim mishuchorim. Now often the Gemara in Chagige, the Gemara says avodim mishuchorim chayivim alois l'regel. I avodim mishuchorim. They're not neitel chelik bo'aretz, and the potur b'shtet the Mishnah in Meiser that avodim mishuchorim they're not misvad. They don't have chelik. Why the chayiv alois l'regel? Teretz is. You don't have to have somebody who's haluk in Eretz Yisrael. Anybody that had a karka, even if he bought the karka, is also sufficient enough. and even it's not his mechalukas ha'aretz, his mela comes back to kasha al kono. Soif, he had a bailus on some kind of a karka, even in Har Ephraim, that should be enough to be considered aliyah l'regel. Al koponim, we saw is chalukas hakohanim, chalukas haLevim, and perhaps there's an afkamina between the zchus of the kohanim and the zchus of Levim in Eretz Yisrael legabe hasach dinim.